Hi there. How you doing today? I would like to talk a little bit about autism and how it might show up in a natal chart. If you don't know, my son's autistic. He's specifically PDA, which means pathological demand avoidance. And I know for a fact that there was no Tylenol ingested when his mother was pregnant with him, even when I insisted that she used Tylenol to help ease the extreme amounts of pain that she experienced. She refused because she didn't want to take any chances with anything. And so when our child was born, since me and her are both astrologers, I'm the one that does it more for a career, but she does it too. That's how we met. Was through mutual friends that also knew astrology. And so when our child was born, we were waiting to mark the exact time so we could make a chart immediately. And immediately upon reading it, we were fairly confident that our boy was probably going to have some form of autism. And how did we know that? Well, if you look here, you see that he has a Mercury conjunct Neptune intercepted in the third house in Pisces. And so this to us made it very apparent that he was going to have extreme difficulties with communication. And, that's a very common thing amongst autistic people. Some autistic people are nonverbal. They either can't or don't speak at all. Others are Gestalt speakers, where they communicate through making references and playing out skits of things that they've seen. And so when we saw this difficulty with communication, we had a fairly reasonable assumption that our child would be on the spectrum, and lo and behold, he was. Very specifically PDA. And so what does this aspect do? Well, Mercury is how we think and how we communicate, and being conjunct Neptune means difficulty with communication, difficulty being understood, and having very intense imagination, very intense dreams. And being in Pisces, the sign ruled by Neptune, that makes it even more powerful, that disillusionment of speech. And then there's the fact that it is intercepted in the third house, which is the house of Gemini, a house affiliated with Mercury, the house affiliated with communication and early childhood. We can see here where especially in his early childhood, he would have a lot of difficulty with communicating, and he would have very intense fantasies in his head that he would want to play out. And this is exactly how he is now at 5 years old. He is verbal. He is Gestalt. He does a much better job these days of having normal sentences that aren't Gestalt, but he's still very much a Gestalt speaker. He loves playing out skits of things he sees on TV. He loves role playing. He loves costumes. He very powerful imagination. But this isn't because he was subjected to Tylenol while he was in the womb. This isn't because of vaccines. And so I just wanted to speak as somebody that has lived this life and has a child to this misinformation that is spreading around. This isn't because he took Tylenol. This isn't because of vaccines. We see this in his chart the moment he was born. So the moment before he ever had any sort of Tylenol affect his system, and to this day, I don't believe he's ever had Tylenol to this day, but also before any vaccines could have been introduced to him, because this is a chart for the moment he was born. We knew from day one what we were going to see because of the chart from the moment he was born. This has nothing to do with anything else. All a vaccine is, if you don't know, all a vaccine is just dead virus cells. It's dead virus cells that cannot reproduce anymore. They introduce it to your system so your immune system can study these dead cells and make antibodies to fight against them. So that way, when a live virus cell is introduced into your system, your body has a head start on how to defeat it. It's like it's like attacking an army that has the schematics for your camp already and all of your equipment you're going to have and knows the exact time you're going to attack versus ambushing somebody that never saw you coming in the first place. Vaccines don't cause autism. This is ridiculous. Tylenol doesn't cause autism. That is equally ridiculous. And you may ask yourself, well, why would they say that? Well, that's because Dr. Oz and RFK and other people affiliated with the Trump administration would benefit from selling their specific medicine, leucovorin, I believe is what it's called. They would make money. It's always about money. It's always a grift. And so I just really wanted to put my story and my experience out there and use my field of experience in astrology to make that very clear for anybody else before they hurt their children listening to these people that only want to make money instead of listening to the dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of scientists and the decades of research that have gone into autism and not being listened to for their research when it's their passion, it's their job to study these things and find these answers. That's what they went into their field for, versus politicians that are just in it to make as much money as they possibly can while they're still in office. Autism isn't something that needs to be cured. It's not a disease. It's not anything. It's just people whose minds work a little bit differently. We are not robots. We are not machines that are built on an assembly line. We are people, and all of our brains work in very different ways. Some people are right-handed. Some people are left-handed. Some people are visual learners. Some people do better studying a text. Some people like to sing. Some people like to fight. Everybody is different, and autism is just a blanket term to describe the people whose differences make it harder for them to play a role in the very standardized lifestyles we have. Some people just don't do well in school. My son is incredibly intelligent, but he would never be able to learn properly in an environment where he has to sit still and be quiet and listen to someone preach in front of a screen or in front of a chalkboard for 8 hours. He couldn't handle that. He's a hands-on learner. He learns better in his own ways. He learns better by experiencing things firsthand and approaching them in his own time, as opposed to having a set schedule he has to follow. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong with him. That just means that he functions better in a different way than what is the standardized process. I am also quite possibly undiagnosed autistic, and you can see that in my chart as well. As you can see in my chart here, I have a Mercury retrograde in Aries, which makes a T-square with Mars and Uranus conjunct Neptune. And so this also is a reflection of struggles with communication. And it's very different than my son's. There are many ways autism can appear in a chart, but it will always have something to do with Mercury, because that is how we think and how we communicate. So if you're curious, let's look at your chart together and see if autism might represent somewhere in there. Have a great day.